I'm Jeff Bond, and welcome back to the Steward Chair, where we bring business leaders insights that go beyond the balance sheet to help you build a more resilient and impactful organization. Today, I'm speaking with Christy Kovac, President and CEO of Sheridan Construction. Christy leads a 77-year-old, 100% employee-owned company and is the first woman to lead a major construction firm in Middle Georgia. Today, we're unpacking the critical importance of intentional succession planning and how a culture of ownership translates directly into client loyalty. This conversation is for every leader who knows that true competitive advantage isn't just about what you do, but how you do it. We'll show you how to leverage your commitment to people to play and win the long game in business. But before we get started, if you haven't already, please follow this podcast wherever you're listening for future content and consider sharing it with a fellow leader. Thank you, and let's dive in. All right. Well, Christy, welcome to the Steward Chair. It's so good to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we just love supporting employee-owned businesses, especially ones that have been 77 years in business. They've got 6% second-generation employees at your organization. It's such a great model in the state of Georgia and really for creating a culture of ownership. So I'm really looking forward to jumping into this today. I'd love to start just by talking about the concept of stewardship. For years, we did a show based on servant leadership, which is a phrase commonly used. And I really have always loved that phrase, particularly with the responsibility that comes with that. But when we looked at business leadership, the one thing that is true that we often kind of forget is that it is a temporary responsibility, that you're paving the way for future generations. And you've already seen that through your organization with 6% being second generation. So when you think about the last 10 years of your role as CEO, 10 plus, and as long as you've been with the organization, what does stewardship mean to you in the context of your role as CEO?
Yeah, a lot of what you're talking about is what I feel is that responsibility for taking what's passed on to you and then continuing to build on that and leave it better than we found it. And as we grow the employee base, building that future for them and their families. So it's a lot of ownership that goes along with that.
Yeah. Tell me about the moment that you first were asked if you'd be even interested in becoming the CEO, because you did inherit it. And I think that's interesting because we talk a lot on this show about whether you built the company or you've inherited the business and it's been entrusted to you. What was that moment like? And how did you wrestle with the decision of saying yes or no on that?
Well, when the discussion started, I was excited about it. I'm always looking for, more challenges, more opportunities, and sometimes you don't know what all of the responsibilities and accountabilities that come along with that, which is that's okay. That's something you step into and learn when it's time. But I felt prepared because my predecessor, Chris Sheridan Jr., the son's founder, or the founder's son, constantly talked about culture and what the company was founded on and how to take care of each other and the clients and the community. So it was pretty ingrained, at least that part. So I felt comfortable with that background.
I love that. And we've had a few conversations on this show about succession planning. And I think it's so important that as stewards of the business, we plan for the future past us. And Chris obviously did that with you and set you up for success. So what would you say was a lesson that you learned from that handoff to you as CEO that Chris did that maybe would be good for other leaders to consider as they're building their organizations and thinking about the future beyond themselves?
I would say it's be intentional and plan far enough ahead that it's not something you can just turn over in 6 months or a year. It takes a runway of 3 to 5 years, to find the right person, to prepare them, to intentionally transfer some relationships, and so I think that's it. He planned well and well enough time ahead, and I will do the same.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, you've decided to become a 100% employee-owned company, and I'd love to hear, how does leading a business where every team member is a shareholder, how has that fundamentally shaped your approach to decision making and your long-term vision as CEO?
I believe the most important thing is that knowing everyone has a voice and allowing them to use that voice and give input, because everybody has great ideas, and many of the ideas come from the people that are doing the actual work. So I think that's been the most eye-opening, is not that I have to make all the decisions and come up with all the ideas, but listen to all the employees and then formulate what is the best thing to move us all forward. And sometimes that's directly correlated with an idea, or sometimes it's just a piece of that.
I love that. I've really been thinking about this a lot lately about how giving an employee a voice and giving them visibility within the organization leads to their sense of fulfillment of the agency that they've been given to go out and to create, to be creative, to be innovative. But oftentimes you see in companies that that work is often unseen or recognized or celebrated. So, what are the things that you feel like you've had to do or adjust as an employee owned company to ensure that's fundamentally in the flow of your everyday operations and creating that culture of ownership?
Great question, because our business development lead, who's now our chief marketing officer, when she came on board 8 years ago, she said we don't celebrate enough. We were busy doing the work, and then moving on, and so she opened my eyes to stopping and celebrating what the employees do, what the clients receive, and so we make that an integral part of our everyday. And sometimes it's just a shout out. Sometimes it's a get together to celebrate, a hard summer shutdown project. So we do that often.
Hmm. I love that. And probably despite your best intentions of wanting to be an employee owned company, you didn't think about stopping and celebrating at the time. And so I love that you were receptive to that idea and that you allowed yourself to shift your thinking as a leader. What did that require of you to say, we're going to stop? Because there's a lot of leaders think to stop and to celebrate means time off the clock and maybe means lost potential revenue. So where have you seen the return on that level of connection that you're creating to your employees to stop and recognize and make that a fundamental part of your business?
It was a little bit of learned behavior, to stop and pause, to intentionally pause. But once you do that and see the investment in the employee and then in the team feeling here, you see what an impact it has on the culture. And that definitely translates directly to the clients and the architects that we work with every day. I always think if we treat our people like we want them to treat our customers, that's the biggest, example we can show.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you've talked so much about your culture in some of our previous conversations, and every interaction we've had with your team has been such a delight. Everyone just seems really tuned into the company culture, really proud of it. And you see your projects and your work way more than just brick and mortar. And so, can you tell us about maybe a specific project or story that has truly embodied the mission of caring for people and how that connects to your company's overall values and purpose?
Yes, absolutely. The one that stands out most is one I had direct experience with, and it's a cafe here in Middle Georgia, and coffee and cafe. And the mission was based on supporting an orphanage in Honduras, where this couple that's the owner adopted a son several years ago, and they were trying to figure out, how do I give back to the home that our son grew up in, and help them be sustainable. And so they planted their coffee beans and are growing coffee beans that then get transported here. So every cup of coffee Middle Georgia drinks, a portion of that goes back to support the orphanage. And I got the chance to go on. It was my first mission trip ever 2 summers ago, with this family and a group of 40 others. And that was certainly special. And you realize really quickly that, again, it's not the bricks and mortar, it's the meaning behind it. And what's interesting is that now another employee of ours, a younger young gentleman, he and his wife were introduced to this couple, and they went to their first mission trip in June and are going back in October. So I love that he's, half my age and already experiencing what that a project for a client truly means.
So take me back to Christy graduating from Georgia Tech and getting her master's at Mercer, her MBA. And would you have ever thought about that as such an integral part of business, is being able to kind of do well while doing good in the world and contributing that way? Or was that something that maybe you learned as you went and saw the impact that business could have?
It was for me having that engineering mindset. Um, I really just focused on the, nose to the grindstone, the nuts and bolts of, do a good job, which I think is definitely still important. But I didn't see the connection in giving back to the community and being integral in the community. So that is definitely something I learned. And if you don't mind, I'll share. Someone asked me recently what was kind of the turning point back 10, 15 years ago that I saw the company and how they gave to the community. And it was Chris Sheridan Jr. When the company was celebrating our 60th anniversary, we were discussing in a small committee group how to celebrate. And, ideas were we'll throw a party and have people over and have food and, drinks. And someone else spoke up and said, what about we give back to the community and build a house for Habitat? And I would have never thought of that. And so that really was the turning point to truly see, okay, this is what this means to be, part of the community and give back.
Have you noticed any sort of shift in terms of the culture or the way that your people feel engaged to the mission and the work that you do when they realize how much you're giving back now and how much that is integral to the work that you do?
Absolutely. But I think it takes a minute for the employees to see that. But when they see the results from giving to the community, taking care of the clients, it doesn't take long to connect and make sense to them. And then they want to do it. They're all in.
Hmm. Yeah, and what the thing that I love, I'm part of the conscious capitalism movement. I'm on the board for the chapter here in Atlanta, and we would really argue that capitalism over the long arc of time has lifted humanity out of the dirt. It's a great economic model. Does it have its shadows? Absolutely. But highly profitable businesses can do a lot of good in the world. And I think it's important to realize that profit and purpose don't have to be mutually exclusive ideas. You don't need to be a suffering servant or a nonprofit leader in order to do good in this world. And here you are, a highly profitable 77-year and 100% employee owned business, making lives better for your stakeholders, your people, your community, their families. You talked about the trickle down to families. When you think about that as a leader, you know, what kind of fulfillment do you feel like you get from that, knowing that your businesses exist for more than just profit alone?
A lot of fulfillment. The saying that a rising tide raises all ships. But we hear that in our community and other businesses, and when you see it, you believe it.
And when you talk to other business owners that are just thinking about profitability alone, you get together in peer circles and groups, is there, and you give advice as to maybe how you run your business and maybe how that kind of strategy is helpful to your growth. What do you tell them, in terms of just how they should connect to mission and purpose and giving back and existing more than just for profit alone for their business?
The impact for what we do day by day definitely has an impact in the long term of our community and our state. So we don't see it as mutually exclusive. Definitely, you know, integrated there.
Love that. Yeah. And I always love for our listeners to hear that because, we have a community of people that are running businesses today or aspire to run businesses tomorrow. And, we look at this as a long game. We belong to the chair. The chair doesn't belong to us. We're simply keeping it warm for the next person. And, that level of engagement in our stakeholder map ensures that we have people who are net promoters of our business, who believe in our integrity, believe in our character. And this really reminds me of a time when you were telling me about a project that you lost, or that you kind of came in second. And I thought that was a really good story, because you said about a year and a half later, after becoming second, you actually won the business. And so walk our listeners through that story, because I think that's a perfect example of playing the long game, and how your integrity has served you well.
Yes, a testimony to patience and taking the high road. We've seen some of our competitors, not be successful on a project, um, and take a client to task. And I just shake my head and go, no, no, no. That the best way to lose that client long term. So we interviewed for a project about a year and a half ago, and came in second. And we always do a debrief to see what we can learn to do better for the next one. But as we're doing that debrief, we want to make that customer or client feel good about giving us the information. So took that. We continued to do work. This was a state organization, continued to do other work for this state organization. And because our teams did so well, when that project was not going so well that we came second in, they ended up canceling the contract and coming to us and said, "Will you take this on?" And we said, "Absolutely, yes." So, yes, being patient, taking the high road definitely pays off in the long run.
Hmm. Yeah, it really makes me think about your work being your best marketing, and the relationships that you're building, because it is a competitive field that you're in. And these are big projects, and the relationship and the trust matters. And I would argue that trust is the most important currency that we have in business today. What you just described, and what you're talking about in terms of the long term, and your commitment to doing the right thing, I think has made such a fundamental difference to who Sheridan is. And how do you kind of embed that within your culture, though? Like, when you're an employee-owned business and you think about creating minimal distance to your customer, and every one of your employees at some point touches the customer or the project, how do you kind of ingrain that within your culture and make sure that everybody is attuned to the importance of that relationship building with your clients, and the commitment to the long term?
We talk about it all day, every day. We are intentional. We have quarterly owner architect experience roundtables here, where sometimes we'll bring in a client so our folks can hear directly from them what is important. Um, and we practice, and we try to again celebrate when we have a success story, bring a team in and let them share. Hey, this project went well, and it's a debrief on how did it go well. And I think when others hear stories of how they can make a success, they, try a little bit harder to do that. And again, our world in construction and being a little bit more engineering, just get it done side, I think takes a little more effort, because there's a little bit of art that goes with the science. So I would say one more layer of this is our teams working so closely and mentoring and coaching each other at each level. That's definitely how we do it day by day.
Love that. Yeah, and I love how you talked about the quarterly roundtables and the way you create moments to celebrate. And you talked a little bit about what it has taken for you to slow down and recognize the importance of those convening moments to celebrate, to share, to make everybody visible within the organization. Ha- for a team of engineers that probably thought similarly to the way you did early in your career too, how do you get everybody to see the significance of those convening moments and those opportunities to celebrate and to share, and to slow down a little bit, and the importance that that has to the business? Do you find that that's hard or natural, or how do you feel like people receive that?
I would say it's not natural, but the teams that are in charge of this make it fun. I think that helps a lot. So play some games, have some raffle moments to get people to open up and share. And again, I think the more we repeat it, I heard recently, leaders are repeaters. So we say it's not a one and done. It's a continue to repeat it, continue to share stories. And then when their peers share a good story, I think that helps them be more comfortable to, try something new or share their own story.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that level of commitment and, showing that that's important in your business so that everybody realizes that we're going to stop, we're going to celebrate, we're going to share. And I think that visibility, creates an opportunity for your people to feel fulfilled and the work that they're doing and be able to share that with their teammates. So, as a steward of the business, how do you actively prepare those coming after you? You talked a little bit about I'm going to create the next succession plan with plenty of runway, but there's leadership development that comes all throughout that tenure. So, how do you kind of actively prepare your leaders today to ensure that the company thrives long term after your tenure is complete?
Yes, it is definitely a project that have to put effort at. And I am part of a peer group of CEOs. And so I process, like next steps and my plan, and they hold me accountable. And then each person on my leadership team has been offered a peer group or a one on one coach because I believe in that development. And that's not something, I have the expertise at. So we opened that. And then the next level down, which would be our project directors, have the same access. And so as we identify those moving up, we have a path that we're working that's written and a timeline that we're holding each other accountable to. And then again, you have to provide the resources to help for the things that the folks of us internally can't do. So it's a combination.
That's so great to hear that even at your director levels that you're providing access to coaching and peer groups, because I often find that organizations that are assigning or appointing leaders, they're just not prepared. Nobody is ever prepared to take on that next level of leadership, or just because you've become a CEO or a VP does not mean you have it all figured out, right? I'm sure you're learning something new every day. And so that's so fundamentally important, I think, to leadership. And I'm glad you share that with others. When you think about the legacy of Sheridan, the legacy of your leadership, what are some of your greatest hopes of what that will look like? And what do you kind of do on your day-to-day basis to ensure that you're, leaving the best mark on the business long term?
At an event last week where my predecessor, Chris Sheridan Jr., was recognized for Citizen of the Year. He talked about standing on others' shoulders and definitely feel the same. And again, the responsibility, the ownership that comes with that. And so, what I want my legacy to be is to leave this company, these employees, these families, in a better place than where, when I took it over, we were. So continuing to grow the company and add employees, add clients, give people opportunities. And that's what my hope is.
Beautiful. I think our grandmothers have all taught us that at some point, leave the world in a better place than where you found it. I don't think
Mhm.
anybody's never has not heard that saying before. So it's a beautiful, beautiful vision. Well, Christy, congratulations on the success that you've had at Sheridan. It's been such a gift to get to know you, learn more about your leadership, how seriously you take stewardship of the business, and I wish you many more years of success under your leadership.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you letting me share.
My sincere thanks to Christy for joining us today. Her insights on the power of a 100% employee-owned culture and the long-term return on celebrating your team truly are testaments to the power of values-driven leadership. And now, here is your steward's call. This is one key moment you can take from our conversation and put into practice today. Treat your people like you want them to treat your customers. Make this your measuring stick for every internal decision. Christy saw a direct correlation between taking time to intentionally pause and celebrate employees and the quality of service that clients received. And remember, building this kind of legacy isn't a future event, it is a daily practice. So whatever you do today, especially in terms of developing your next layer of leadership through coaching and peer groups like Christy did at Sheridan Construction, this kind of thing will shape the impact that you leave behind. If you found today's conversation valuable, please take a moment to follow the Steward Chair wherever you get your podcasts. It's the best way to ensure you'll never miss an episode. And to help us grow this community, please share this episode with a leader you respect. A final thank you to our incredible team, executive producers Quentin Thomas and Thomas Mastro-Totero, and our managing editor, Daniel Mastro-Totero. They are the true stewards behind this show. And I'm your host and researcher, Jeff Bond. And with that, now go and be a leader worth following.